Hi, dear listeners. Here is Lida Bach for you again, and I have a new interview with you. Actually, I would say I am still in Tallinn, for which I'm doing this interview for the Tallinn Black Nights Film Festival. But we are not in Tallinn. We are in Athens now at the European Panorama of Film. But because here I caught finally up with Alexandros Avranas. He escaped me in Tallinn, going right here. He had his new film Quiet Life first at the Black Nights. Now he has it at the Panorama of European Film, and it was already in Venice. So you're hopping from one festival to the next with this very interesting drama.
Hello everybody. Yep. I mean, the film has been traveling to many festivals, so some of them I'm following. Yeah, it's funny that we meet here in Athens, it's where I'm staying and living, and happy to talk to you.
So your movie Quiet Life, it's about a family, they're refugees, and their two children, they have two young daughters, and they both get affected. They're staying in Scandinavia, or they hope to stay in Scandinavia. It's still pending if they can stay or if they have to return to Russia, where they would be persecuted, and they also have, the father has been tortured, so it's really traumatic what this family has gone through. And the kids have first one daughter, and later the next is their...
It's Pauline.
First, Pauline is, the one daughter is affected by a very rare syndrome, and I also Googled a bit about it. So she totally withdraws into herself. She becomes completely catatonic, one could say. How did you come across that unusual story?
I read an article in New Yorker back in 2017, 18, I don't remember so well. And I found it very interesting because, I mean, it's like a fairy tale. It's like a Sleeping Beauty, but the end is not so positive, let's say. And then I couldn't believe that this is really happening. I mean, that kids from 5 to 15, they're falling into this mysterious coma, and it can take up to 5 years until they wake up. So I found it very interesting as an allegory. What is the society we are giving to our children? And this was the beginning of the script, let's say, to start working on it.
So the syndrome, it's called Resignation Syndrome, and that's basically what it's about. What doctors suppose that causes it. It's this kind of utter despair, this kind of feeling that the kids have to traumatic experiences that they can't escape, that they cannot do anything to change their lives. So basically they give up, but they just don't give up in the sense like most of us would by becoming maybe depressive, but they completely stop to react on to outer impulses.
It's shut off the computer, let's say. It's like the upper part of the brain stops working, and they fall into this coma, and they listen somehow or they feel, but they are not reactive at all, and it's totally unconsciously.
So did you talk to families to whom this actually happened?
Families, doctors, migration board, everything. I mean, it's a very risky film, let's say, because I'm Greek, doing a film with Russian actors in Sweden. So the film itself didn't want to be, finger pointing, and criticizing, harsh like a political film will do, but trying to understand and be rational in an unrational world, let's say. And of course, we did all the research, and of course, in Sweden, there are people believing that this is happening, and people that they would love to believe that it's not happening. The kids are faking it, let's say. And this is more the far right part of Swedish, politicians and people, let's say.
Yeah, of course, you would wonder how a kid would fake something that intense that long. Like you could maybe fake it for an hour, but try and do nothing at all for 1 hour, and you will see how hard it is. And then do it like for weeks or months or even years. It would be next to impossible, especially for a child. And many, especially neurological or mental illnesses, have not been recognized early on. Like when people had epilepsy, we thought they were possessed by the devil, or faking it. So that's nothing new. But it's also interesting how you approach that story, because it's it's also interesting how you approach that story, because it's also a very quiet film. It's very low toned. There's not much action. The focus is on the emotions, what goes on inside people. Would you like to talk about that? Because I imagine it must be very difficult to make a film that's so intense, but not with much action happening.
The whole idea of the directing and everything and the script came out that these people, the parents, mostly they are living in a limbo, for maybe up to 2 years waiting, for the decision, of the migration board. So that means we try very hard to recreate this feeling of waiting for your life to be started. And in contrary of this are the kids where they are becoming very Swedish. They're going to the school, they're learning the language, they become part of the society. And I'm not sure if the film is so quiet as you are saying, but I think a lot of things happening, but in a sense of they are not taking they are not starting fighting, or they are reacting mostly to what happened to them. So they lost every authority they had, the parents, also on their kids, on their children. So how you can show this lack of authority? These people are coming to ask for asylum. There are mostly people, intellectuals, let's say, or people that they did the revolution against the regime in Russia, Putin, and all these things. But then they have to wait, and they are becoming somehow like B citizens, like most the refugees.
It's also very interesting cinematically, because especially in the opening shot, you have the impression that you have a very specific idea what kind of picture you want to make. We have this steady frame, and then everybody moves from the family. Each family member moves into that frame as if they have to present a specific picture that the authorities want to see. And this is a nice, good, like law-abiding family, but it's not enough to be just good people and to be persecuted. They need to fit into one certain specific image that the Swedish authorities have and want them to impersonate. So how much influence did you have on the cinematography? Was it all in your hand, or was it more like...
I don't know. I think it's in my head. I mean, it's what I was trying to do is that to show that these people, they are trying their best to be part of this society. And if you want to be part of their society, you have to learn the rules of this society. And this is how the film starts, They are trying hard to become part of it. And at the end, doesn't matter, It's just poor bureaucracy that decides what is it, and if you are going to make it in this new society, or if you have to go back. So there are not so many references, let's say.
And it's also a very timely topic. Once it deals with the war and the persecution that's anti-suppressive regime in Russia. Also the regime that attacks its own citizens. And also with immigration, which is a big topic in most countries, which are now affected by big migration waves. Is that so you have two very political, very important issues in one film, and then this issue of the illness. How did you deal with all that? Or were you ever worried that it would become too much to juggle and balance all those subjects?
Good point. We struggle a lot, also in the script, with my co-writer, because we try to balance the political, the family drama, plus also the medical thing. And it was super tough because we added a scene, and it was becoming political. One more scene and it was becoming to family drama. So I think all this comes together in a sense, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a society. It doesn't matter if they are from Russia or they're coming to Sweden. It means it talks about people that they are coming from countries with conflict, and we have a lot of them around us. And the thing is that at the end of the day, the film talks about humanity and compassion and hope.
And the film has also a very specific color palette. We have like these gray, dark, black, and a lot of
is it gray? Really?
I found it was like a lot of anthracite, gray tones, black tones. So a very dark color palette, and it has a lighter face, because there is a moment where the family can kind of breathe. And this is when the children, like when their one daughter is really affected, because then their immigration process is suspended. So for now they can stay. It doesn't mean they can stay permanently, but as long as their daughter is ill, they are allowed to stay for the moment. And this is a very ambivalent situation, because on the one side, their child is suffering and it's horrible. And on the other hand, this big fear that they have to return to Russia is lifted for the moment from them, but it's still hanging over them. So there's like this lighter phase.
I have the feeling that the film is not gray or dark or somehow. I feel it's super light in the sense of this Swedish Nordic light, in a sense. And there is a grayness, I have to say, that comes together with the bureaucracy. It's a color that, the bureaucracy and the system has always an aesthetic that beats you, it wins. And you have everything, but you are not allowed to use anything. So, and this was the idea behind the production design and also the photography, to have this calmness, but in a Nordic way, let's say, that can be seen like very clear or very, how it's called? I don't know, very clear, let's say. So, yeah.
How did you find your actors, especially the child actors? Because it must be challenging to have a role that is so withdrawn. And
we were looking for 1.5 years in 4 countries. All the Russian actors, they are not living in Russia. 2 of them are refugees themselves, like Chupan Hamatova and Grigory Dobrygin. Chupan is applying always for asylum, so she knows the procedure very well. And the children are living already in Sweden, not in Sweden, in Estonia, and they are born there. So they are Russian, but not living in Russia. It was for us very important not to support, let's say, the regime, in a sense. So, and we were looking in every country that there are Russian citizens or people who speaking Russian. And then I found like 50 kids. I did the workshop and then cutting out. And then I brought also the actors and did the workshop. And then we decided for these 2 kids.
Also, your former movie, for example, Daughter of Violence, was focused on...
Miss Violence,
Miss Violence was also focused on family story, a very intense family story, where emotional repression played a big role. What is it on those family and very, very personal stories that attracts you?
First of all, they are all real stories. I mean, the story of Miss Violence, I found it in Germany. It was a story called Detlefes. You can find it on the net. It was a true story. And, it was the family again. The family was itself a system, and now it's the family against the system. So it's a very it's like mirrored, stories itself. And I think the family works very well also in the Greek tragedies, as a good beginning point or starting point, or you can recreate a system into the family or from the family to the system. So it will make sense for me, talk politically.
You have presented your film, as we already mentioned, on many different festivals. How do you perceive the reactions of the audience when they see this very touching, very challenging story? Are they difficult?
No.
Are differences in the reactions, or would you say it's more universal?
It's very universal and very emotional, touched the audience, let's say. And the only question that comes is that how this thing is happening in Sweden, that there are some like a model country to all Europeans, and also how this thing really exists, this resignation syndrome. It feels very dystopian, but our society, I think our lives are dystopian, so in a sense, so it should come together.
What would be your personal hope that people take from this movie when they watch it?
I think in our times we have lost a little bit the tenderness and the compassion and to look each other. I think we're all hiding behind, social medias creating new ideas, and we lost, also here in Greece we see the refugees, but we look at them but we don't see them so really. So they are labeled, he's a refugee or she's a refugee, and we don't have any emotional connection. And I think through the human beings is the hope coming back, not through the system.
Do you believe that these psychosomatic afflictions, as one could call it maybe, that it's also a metaphor, a physical, for things that are going on in our system, that we consciously or unconsciously react on those things by producing these, or our bodies or react by reproducing these illnesses?
I think the first title of the film was Apathy. And the apathy, it was also how the syndrome was called in the past, apathy, before there was catatonia and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that what I see is Europe become very politically correct and very afraid of showing emotions, and hiding behind labels. And I think this is the most important thing of the film, in the sense of talking, about this cold or calm or distant, feeling of them in this society, of these people. Because, when you're a refugee, you're fighting for your life. Something that we as Europeans, we don't have to do anymore. And that's a good thing. But on the other hand, we're too settled, too comfort. We feel too comfortable. And this is also the title of Quiet Life. Is the quiet life the refugees are seeking, or is the quiet life that doesn't want to be disturbed from the Europeans?
And I don't want to give away the ending, because I suppose that most of you that are listening now have not been able to see the film, since it did not yet have a regular cinematic release. It has only been shown at various festivals. But the ending can feel almost elliptic, or depending on how you interpret it, there's a positive aspect, but it can also be seen as that the whole story will repeat itself, or that they're stuck in that limbo.
It feels more like the younger generation is the one is gonna change the world, let's say, if we let them change the world. Or otherwise we're gonna put them in a specific form and they are just gonna repeat our mistakes.
And normally I would just now ask, how does it feel to be in Tallinn? But we're not in Tallinn anymore. So how does
I
it
shot in Tallinn. I know Tallinn, but let's talk about Tallinn. I did the whole prep of the film. We shot 15 days and 5 days in Finland. So I know Tallinn somehow quite well. I mean, through also the location scouting, I have seen a lot of things. It's an interesting city. You feel the Soviet,
Soviet
influence.
vibe, it's still there.
Vibes, and but they're struggling and they're fighting, to be European. And I think they're super European and super Nordic, let's say. But the weather is unbearable, I have to say. I mean, it's too cold, too
It's
dark.
very gray, yeah.
Yes, and being here now in Athens, you can see the contrast of the sun shining.
And where are you off next? Which festivals will this film?
I think it's the Red Sea Film Festival, and then they are coming more in January. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna follow all of them. I have to go to some to support the film, but yeah, I have to move on also to the next product.
That would also be what my next question would be about. Would you like to talk about, or about?
We're still considering and exploring. I mean, it's like 2 months after Venice, so, and the film ended. We'll finish the film end of July, so we are considering 2-3 ideas to see how we're gonna move forward with my co-writer Stavros.
And could you give away as much as if it's again a drama film?
No, it should be maybe a medieval political thriller.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see that. And at the moment, Quiet Life is at the Panorama of European Film here in Athens. It will get a cinematic release in Germany as well, and in Canada. I'm quite sure about that.
And a lot of countries, France and Japan and Spain and whole Europe.